Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, where I climb the online series 2 VGC ladder in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and provide live commentary as I go. In this video, I'm going to be trying out a team that reached rank number 1 in the in-game online ladder, and it features Booster Energy Iron Moth as well as Life Orb Flutter Mane and Focus Sash Glimmora. The general idea is that with Booster Energy, Iron Moth becomes really speedy. It can drop your opponent's special defense via Acid Spray, allowing the other special attackers on the team to take advantage of those drops and just pick up big knockouts. You also have Dondozo and Tatsugiri, which continues to be a strong combination in Series 2, and an Assault Vest Flying Tera Kingambit. As always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team, but if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps down in the description below. And thank you so much as always for joining me. If you enjoy, I'd really appreciate if you consider leaving a like on the video or subscribing to the channel. Really helps out a ton. Anyway, let's get started. First of all, a huge congratulations to VGC for reaching rank number 1 on the ladder with this team. You can see the rental code on the screen in the top right corner here, and you can see here their win rate and the rank number 1 that they ended up getting. And so, yeah, this team is really consistent. It also just utilizes, I think, one of the most fast-paced offensive combos between the Flutter Mane as well as the Iron Moth. And so, yeah, excited to feature all of these Pokemon, especially the Glimmora, since I feel like I haven't really used that much on the channel so far. But yeah, I've linked Chang's Twitter down in the description below. So the first Pokemon to talk about here is Iron Moth. Now, Iron Moth is just one of the faster Pokemon in the format with base 110 speed, and it also has one of the highest base special attacks in the current format with base 140. And so the general idea is that Iron Moth here is max speed. You've got the Booster Energy, which allows you to get that speed boost and essentially outspeed everything in the format that doesn't have a speed boost on the opposing side. The main thing to worry about is, for example, other Booster Energy Pokemon like Booster Energy Flutter Mane or the Iron Bundle, for example. But outside of those, you're just going to outspeed everything, basically. And so the general idea is to use Acid Spray, lower your opponent's special defense, finish it off with any of your special attackers. One thing that you can do, though, is often if you lead Iron Moth Flutter Mane, for example, your opponents will think Flutter Mane's going to be the one attacking, right? And so I've had games where I actually like Acid Spray and then protect with Flutter Mane or Glimmora and then finish things off with Overheat. This thing is super powerful. Like, even looking at it now, I'm like, whoa, I kind of didn't realize just how much base special attack it had, right? And so as a result, you don't need max special attack investment, and the Iron Moth has a little bit of bulk as well to ensure that you survive for a little bit longer. And it's just a general set with Acid Spray, Overheat, and then Heat Wave for good spread damage as well. Ghost Tera, by the way, exists here mainly to get around things like Fake Out, so you can lead something like Iron Moth Flutter Mane, which is an incredibly fast-paced and offensive duo, and essentially block a Fake Out, and then just go immediately for something like Acid Spray into a Moonblast or a Shadow Ball, for example. This Flutter Mane is pretty interesting, by the way. I feel like almost everyone's been using max special attack, max speed Flutter Mane. This is a speedy Flutter Mane, but it's not max speed, so keep that in mind because you'll be slower than opposing Flutter Manes often, but you've got a lot of bulk between HP and defense, and so the Flutter Mane can actually survive for a longer period of time, which on this team is really valuable because, you know, you don't have the Focus Sash, right? And getting 2 Life Orb hits off is a really, really big deal with this Pokemon. Otherwise, the moveset is fairly standard, but yeah, you've got some bulk to work with, but be aware of the fact that you're not max speed here. Glimmora is one of the main stars of this team and one of the main reasons I wanted to try out this team. So Glimmora is interesting, right? First of all, it's got base 86 speed, so it actually can outspeed the Golden Go, which is really nice. This team has a lot of anti-Golden Go, as you can see, and Golden Go is not as common in this format as it was in Series 1, but still a nice Pokemon to outspeed. And Glimmora also gets access to this incredible ability in Toxic Debris, right? And so if you're hit by a physical attack, it just sets up Toxic Spikes on the opposing side. That's really valuable, especially for opposing Dondozo teams, because this team does have Dondozo and Tatsugiri on it, right? And so there are a lot of games where you can just win the Dondozo mirror by setting up the Toxic Spikes early and then closing out the game with this, right? Because you'll kind of outstall the opposing Dondozos, which is really nice. You've also got Kingambit here, very standard Assault Vest set. The main thing to call out here is it has Tera Blast instead of something like a fighting type attack, for example, and it combos nicely with Fairy Tera here. Allows you to hit like those dragon types for a little bit harder, as well as something like Brute Bonnet, which of course is dark typing. To round out the team, you've got Dondozo and Tatsugiri, fairly standard Choice Scarf set here, and this is just the leftovers Dragon Tera set. No substitute, so keep that in mind, as you might have a little bit of trouble against things like a Moongus or Brute Bonnet, which can put you to sleep, so you can't sub away from those. Also, with Dondozo, right, like Chesto plus Rest is something that's been popping up. This is just a general, typical leftover set, and you're using the stretchy Tatsugiri, so you get speed boost onto Dondozo rather than attack boosts, but that can be valuable, especially in a format where there's so many Pokemon that can actually outspeed Dondozo even at +2. A lot of those Paradox Pokemon, like opposing Iron Moth, opposing Flutter Mane, opposing Iron Bundles, for example, can outspeed Dondozo even when it's maxed, right? And so that's where getting an extra speed boost can give you a huge, huge advantage. So, yeah. In terms of how to play with the team, I think Iron Moth plus Flutter Mane or Iron Moth plus Glimmora is a really strong lead. Dondozo leads are always obviously strong as well because your opponents immediately think you might like switch in Tatsugiri. So you can go Dondozo with Iron Moth, for example. Dondozo with Flutter Mane. Those are really strong leads. I think Kingambit's just fairly flexible. I think this Pokemon you mainly want to, I would say, lead if you're not at risk of just getting knocked out immediately or getting hit by a Will-O-Wisp, because Kingambit can just distribute a lot of damage throughout the course of the battle. And early on, like, it can be tempting to lead it into an Arcanine, but if you just get burnt, then obviously Kingambit loses value. So keep that in mind. Anyway, that's a quick breakdown of the team. Let's highlight some weaknesses. So in terms of things that I've run into, the first thing that I'll highlight is that nothing on this team actually has a ground resistance or immunity, so ground type attacks in general can be pretty powerful, especially given the super effective damage into Iron Moth, Kingambit, and Glimmora, so watch that. Also, if you don't go with the Dondozo Tatsugiri combination, obviously water type Pokemon look really good against this core, especially something like Palafin, so that's something that can cause some problems, for example. And I think with this team, for example, Iron Moth loves comboing with Acid Spray, but if you're not actually able to execute the combo, you often will waste a lot of time. For example, I've had matches where I lead Iron Moth and Flutter Mane or Iron Moth and Glimmora, and my opponent's able to like double up into the Glimmora before I get an attack off. Or sometimes I like will protect with one of these two and my Iron Moth gets doubled up into, right? And I'm trying to like set up Acid Spray for an immediate combination, but my opponents are basically aware of that. And so Acid Spray becomes a lot weaker in my opinion if you're not able to capitalize off it immediately or the subsequent turn, because then of course your opponent can just switch out. And so keep that in mind as you use this team, especially since like you do have some bulk to work with these three Pokemon, but they can still go down fairly easily. And defensively, I would say they're not like the best in terms of coverage, right? And ground type attacks obviously do super well into Iron Moth, Kingambit, and Glimmora, so keep that in mind. I also think one of the tricky things about this team is figuring out when to utilize Dondozo and Tatsugiri with the rest, because these four are actually just a really strong core in itself. And so I've had games where I probably shouldn't be bringing Dondozo Tatsugiri, I bring it, and then I struggle with it. Or I've had games where I just go with these four and realize I need more bulk to work with because my opponent has like a really strong water type of Pokemon, for example, and Dondozo would wall it a lot better. Also, with this Dondozo set, as I alluded to earlier, you don't have Substitute, you don't have a Steel Tera, so things like... one, Intimidate can be a problem because Tatsugiri is not attack boosting, right? And so that can be problematic. Two, without Substitute, it's a lot easier to get hit by Spore and things like Clear Smog. Haze is obviously still a counter Dondozo. That really hasn't gone anywhere. And I would say that, you know, now that we're playing a format where there are more Pokemon that outspeed Dondozo, right? Like if I've committed my Tera to something else, Dondozo can be pretty weak to a Freeze Dry from an opposing Iron Bundle, which can still outspeed me even if I've combined with Tatsugiri. And so those are some things that can cause opposing issues as well. Just, you know, offensive Pokemon on the opposing side that I can't necessarily one-shot because they have like a Focus Sash or they just take the attacks decently well, even if I've combined with Tatsugiri. Also, one thing that a lot of smarter players I feel like have done really well recently when playing against Dondozo Tatsugiri is time things well, so that as soon as Dondozo gets KO'd and Tatsugiri gets ejected out, they're able to either KO Tatsugiri or get some like status condition onto it, or just deal a lot of damage onto it before it even gets to make a move on the next turn. So that's one thing to watch out for. But yeah, I think like ground and water is really good against especially the main core outside of the Dondozo and Tatsugiri, and obviously against Dondozo, like being able to burn it or intimidate it can be really valuable, especially with the lack of the attack boost. So yeah, just a couple things that I've listed here, but let's get started. Okay, we've got pretty similar teams. They have Dondozo and Tatsugiri in the back on their side. So I really value Glimmora here. They also have Annihilate. That feels like Scarf Gambit Annihilate to me. It just kind of screams that. I really like Iron Moth and the Glimmora lead here, with my Dondozo and Tatsugiri in the back, I think. Amoonguss can be kind of annoying here, so that's one thing to think about. Kingambit, not really that great. Flutter Mane is like, it's worth considering in my opinion, but I don't know. I think it's just generally kind of frail. The reason it's worth considering is because I could go Flutter Mane Moth and just like Acid Spray into a Moonblast onto the Dondozo, but I think Glimmora is really valuable here, and Glimmora exists on the team to give you a much more favorable matchup into opposing Dondozos, and that's because you can, one, potentially get, you know, a layer of Toxic Spikes up, which would allow you to win kind of the Dondozo versus Dondozo mirror. Unless they're rest, if they're rest, things get more annoying, and that is something that's been popping up a little bit more. It's going to be Annihilate and Golden Go. So I'll tell you what, I like am fairly sure this is Choice Scarf Annihilate. It just makes the most sense given this lead. But since we've got the Booster Energy on the Iron Moth, like, I could just turn one Earth Power into Golden Go and just Heat Wave. And if they end up final gambiting into Moth, that's fine. I'm actually thinking about doubling up onto Annihilate, as wild as that seems. Because Golden Go is like in such a bad spot right now. I almost want to overheat Annihilate and Energy Ball it. But I guess if they're Scarf, they're clicking Final Gambit here, right? It also could be defensive Tera Golden Go, but yeah, there's the switch. Cool. Into their Iron Moth. Okay, so already confirmed they didn't bring, you know, both Dondozo and Tatsugiri. Booster energy on their end as well, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, like the whole point of this play was so that I could survive Final Gambit and then KO them. I guess the Energy Ball would have gotten redirected anyway. It's a little frustrating, it's fine. Like, I'm still pretty proud about the play I made turn 1. Although, would it make sense to Power Gem there? No, I don't think so. Let's go into Dondozo now. Man, that stings. They were going for the Final Gambit play. And they had a Moongus in the back, so you could see, like, Iron Moth completely destroyed their team. That's okay. I can protect Dondozo right now. We know Golden Go's their final Pokemon. I could... That's Ground Terra. Losing Iron Moth like that is very bad, honestly. But it's okay. I can Power Gem the Amoonguss and protect. Iron Moth switches, which is fine. The big question is where's Spore going into right now from Amoonguss, right? Because my plan was to just Power Gem and then switch out into Tatsugiri and, like, click Wave Crash, maybe. Well, I guess it doesn't matter, because I still get this Power Gem off. That's really solid damage. And they Spore into Dondozo. Okay, cool. You know what? I actually think it's better to just straight up stay in right now. Power Gem Amoonguss and Wave Crash into it. Because we saw how much Power Gem just did to Amoonguss, right? And I really don't want them to have, like... Yeah, they just stay in. Cool. Nice. And they just make it rain. Beautiful. Yeah, that works. Cool. So basically the logic with this play was I don't want them to survive Wave Crash from the range that they were at, Spore me, and then if they have Clear Smog, I'm in so much danger. Whereas now I just get the knockout onto Amoonguss. Yeah, the Rocky Helmet. So you get to bring Iron Moth back out, but the thing is they just sacrifice their booster energy, right? Now the one downside is that I've taken a ton of damage with the Dondozo, right? But I think here we just send it. Switch Glimmora out into Tatsugiri. And just Earthquake. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think the big thing here was being able to knock out Amoonguss before they were able to Spore me, so... Even despite that turn 1 overheat miss, we're still in okay shape so far. I think one of the questions, though, is did I bring the absolute best Pokemon into this battle? We'll think about that after the game's over. Okay, get our boosts. They're still faster and get Acid Spray off, but that doesn't really make a difference here because it means I get my Earthquake off. Cool. And that's just a double knockout. Beautiful. I guess it could have been scary there if Iron Moth had a way to, like, one-shot the Dondozo from the range that I was at. I don't really know if you can, but yeah. Dondozo was just so strong here that even despite that early overheat miss against the Annihilate, which we figured was Choice Scarf, it was still fine. Basically, the thing is, if Annihilate you know, I get that overheat off, then Final Gambit shouldn't KO us, and then you can see, like, Iron Moth is just fairly good into their team, although I guess awkwardly enough I would have been at -2 special attack. But yeah, in the end, it was interesting because they didn't even bring Dondozo or Tatsugiri, but it makes sense because they probably saw, like, the Glimmora on our team and they were worried about that. So even though Glimmora didn't end up actually doing that much damage, I think it applies a lot of pressure in team preview, and it synergizes really nicely with the Iron Moth. Rank number 24, oh boy. Murkrow, Baxcalibur, Kingambit, Mimikyu, Flutter Mane, Arcanine. So, feels very similar to the team that won San Diego. Although, obviously, it doesn't have Garganacl. They have Murkrow, so I gotta be a little bit more careful about Dondozo, Tatsugiri. It's one of those interesting things where I think Dondozo Tatsu is actually still really strong, and if we can somehow eliminate Murkrow early on, it kind of clears the path for it, but that's easier said than done. I like Kingambit a lot, although I'm worried about Will-O-Wisp potentially from Mimikyu. This one's tough because I think Murkrow is really good for Tail. Like, I'm curious though, I guess, do you lead Murkrow immediately and go for Tailwind immediately? Glimmora is still pretty sweet here. If they don't lead Murkrow and they go with it in the back, what would you lead with? Maybe Flutter Mane? Arcanine? Would you really lead Arcanine here? Yeah, maybe I just don't go with Dondozo in this one. It just feels a little odd because I think Dondozo is still really strong, but I don't know who to drop for it is my problem because I really want like the Iron Moth plus the Glimmora lead. Oh my god, also their trainer card was so cute. That was like... I love Mousehold. Anything Mousehold related, I will... It's just my favorite thing in this gen. Flutter Mane, Arcanine. So what do I want to do against this? We have Booster Energy. I'm thinking, like, Acid Spray into this turn 1, and then so the next turn I can just, like, Overheat and then just protect Glimmora turn 1. But this could backfire if they double up onto the Iron Moth. So Kingambit would have been interesting here. I feel like you wouldn't lead this unless you had Will-O-Wisp on Arcanine. So I'm making an educated guess right now that it's not Assault Vested. Nice. Already a good start. Beautiful. Stay protected with Arcanine. I get Acid Spray. Cool. And now what I'm thinking is next turn I Overheat Power Gem. Oh, that worked out so well. Beautiful. And that's one of the nice things about this team. I think a lot of people often assume the choice specs on Glimmora, but we don't have it here. So Overheat into you and Power Gem into you. Arcanine, of course, could Snarl here, but either way, I still like my positioning a lot. That turn 1 played out, honestly, as well as it could have. Like, I confirm Arcanine's not Assault Vested. You also just used up Protect, so now I can target that slot a little bit more freely. I conserve my Focus Sash on Glimmora, and Iron Moth now applies pressure against the Flutter Mane. So there's Overheat, and that's a KO. Ooh, that is so satisfying. Arcanine also stayed in and did not Tera either, which I would say is pretty good for us. And it's slower than Glimmora. Wonderful. Does a ton of damage. Activates a Citrus Berry. Cool, works for me. So far, this game has gone incredibly well. And they actually go for Will-O-Wisp. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I mean, it breaks my Sash. It makes sense. Like, I would expect Snarl if they had it there. But this is what I was saying, right? Like, normally you don't love the idea of giving Kingambit a Defiant boost, but this lead actually would have worked out incredibly well against Kingambit because you could just burn me immediately, right? Baxcalibur comes out now. Okay. I mean, here I'd lean towards double protecting just to see what Baxcalibur wants to do because I think a Tera is likely. My only fear is if Baxcalibur has like setup right now. So Arcanine switches. That's actually big because it means now I can pivot Kingambit to get a Defiant boost later on. Yep, Murkrow's the last one. Okay. And here's a Tera. Oh man, I think Baxcalibur actually has the firepower to sweep through my entire team right now. Also, that Will-O-Wisp was smart because it was kind of done to prevent activating my ability. Yeah, so the problem for me now is they can just Tailwind this next turn, right? Which is really scary. Ooh, it has Earthquake as well. I think I should have considered doubling up on Murkrow. I mean, Murkrow switched in, so was Arcanine previously, but now they can obviously just Tailwind and Earthquake. I kind of get swept by Earthquake right now, honestly. Ground Terra Excalibur with Earthquake was definitely not on my radar for what to expect here, but that is a very nasty surprise for me to run into. Oh, but you know what I can do? I can Acid Spray Tera to get rid of my weakness, and then just Energy Ball you, right? I don't know how fast Baxcalibur is. Like, we do have the Booster Energy boost on the Volcarona, but Baxcalibur under Tailwind might just outspeed us, right? But the idea here is to hopefully survive the turn with Glimmora and at least get the Energy Ball off, and then put it in KO range. So, yep, there's Tailwind. But if the Iron Moth is still faster here, I think we win the game if they're not, like, choice banded. But it's slower. Okay. But I've at least gotten rid of my weakness here, which is what I was looking for. Yeah, and I survive. Toxic Debris gets activated. I don't think the Debris is really super relevant here. The main thing is now I get to go into Kingambit. It's Life Orb. Okay, that makes sense. Well, I would think Energy Ball plus Sucker Punch is a KO here. That looks like it. Okay. 28 down to 19 HP on Glimmora. Let's bring out Arcanine. Or sorry, let's bring out Kingambit. So the thing is, Sucker Punch onto this is so incredibly obvious that it makes sense for them to just protect. But it's still fine. The main thing right now is I think they could pivot out into Arcanine, so it's a question of whether or not I want to read into that, but I think I'm okay just clicking Sucker Punch here. And Power Gem into Murkrow. Yep, they just protect. The reason I'm okay with this is because now I just bring out my my Flutter Mane. Yeah, you're gonna Foul Play, KO Glimmora, that's fine. It's another layer of Toxic Spikes as well. But essentially, I get to bring out Flutter Mane for free. I think the main interesting thing right now is it's so obvious for them to now switch out into the Arcanine with the Baxcalibur slot. 2 turns of Tailwind. So I'm thinking about making the read. I'm not sure I really need to, though. I don't know, like a Kowtow Cleave would just win me the game here if I called it correctly. And I just like, it's so likely for them to switch. Okay, I'm gonna Kowtow Cleave Moonblast. Yeah, nice. I don't know, that was like a little bit risky, but it's just like, Sucker Punch is like the safe play there, and it might still honestly be the right play, but I think with this, it's nearly impossible for them to come back. Because you just activated Defiant, so Kingambit. I guess you could always haze away the Defiant. Yeah, that's one interesting thing. Haha, nice. Yeah, that's what they did. Smart. So with that, I actually don't necessarily win yet. But the Toxic Spikes now. Oh, actually, we also just one-shot Murkrow. I was expecting that to survive, but the Life Orb damage here gives us probably the extra firepower we need to get that knockout. Cool, and now we just get a Kowtow Cleave into the Arcanine, which is also poisoned. Beautiful. They bring out Baxcalibur, we double protect, Sucker Punch, Moonblast, GG. The only way I could lose this right now is if I forgot about Tailwind. There's just... Oh, no, sorry. I can't protect with Kingambit, actually. Actually, let's think this through. Last turn of Tailwind. Yeah, Sucker Punch this, and Protect is fine. Unless, like, I'm just worried about that having, like, a Rogue Dragon Dance. So I don't necessarily need to Sucker Punch. Obviously, this could... I mean, I'm just trying to think of, like, every possibility to how I could lose right now. Okay, I'll actually Sucker Punch Arcanine, so they don't get a Flare Blitz off. Arcanine protects, that's fine. That probably means they're just Earthquaking with Baxcalibur. And it's like, here, if Baxcalibur Earthquakes, well, I just KO you with Flutter Mane next turn. If you Dragon Dance, I can just Sucker Punch you. Yep, and they just Earthquake. Cool. Like, Arcanine faints from Poison. Baxcalibur takes so much damage between Life Orb and Poison. And I don't even think this KOs Kingambit, truthfully, because it's such a bulky Pokemon. But let's see. I really don't know my Baxcalibur Life Orb calcs here. Yeah, it does survive. Beautiful. Poison was really nice here to just finish these off. And yeah, like, part of the upside of using a Dondozo team is my opponent felt pressure to have Dondozo, or sorry, bring Murkrow in the back. And so we could leverage that to our advantage. So, Arcanine faints. Glimmora was so good for us in this match, though. That Ground Terror was what I really needed, I think, in order to get around the super effective Earthquake hit. So now we can just Sucker Punch. And Moonblast. And yeah, like, the thing is, like, with Dondozo, opponents will feel pressure to bring Murkrow. The Arcanine also makes sense because it gives them Intimidate. And I think turn 1 gave me a huge advantage, right? Because I was essentially able to eliminate their Flutter Mane without the Flutter Mane doing anything in this game. Ice Shard comes out there. It doesn't get the KO, but does prevent Sucker Punch from working. You know, because they had Ice Shard, like, I knew Flutter Mane would be bulky enough to take one, but if Earthquake had knocked out Kingambit, maybe there was actually a chance where I could have lost. But you could say the same thing, right? If I Sucker Punch into Baxcalibur, they Flare Blitz into Kingambit, it'd be a similar outcome. It's just a question of whether or not Flare Blitz or Earthquake would get the knockout there. But yeah, shout out to Glimmora because it put in so much work for us, as well as Iron Moth, right? Being able to eliminate the Flutter Mane the way I did put me into a much more favorable position. So yeah, really happy about that game overall. Though I think the end game could have been a little bit cleaner on my end. Okay, Scizor, love seeing that. Iron Moth, Brute Bonnet, Dragonite, Flutter Mane, and Tauros. It's the Brute Bonnet that actually concerns me. I guess I have like a fair amount of super effective damage into it. Scizor also scares me a lot. I've led this both games so far, but I might just go with it again, honestly. Scizor's a huge problem for Flutter Mane. I think the main question is, do I actually want Dondozo Tatsugiri in the back? This is Dragon, you know, plus Order Up. So I don't think it's bad. Earthquake is also solid into their team. Kingambit would take advantage of a potential Intimidate, but I have to worry about Iron Moth. Fairy Terror is okay. And Flutter Mane here is also decent damage if I can clear Scizor. I suspect they'll have Scizor in the back, though, is my problem. But what does that imply for their lead? I'm not sure. Yeah, like, I'm really not confident in Dondozo and Tatsugiri here, honestly. Alright, I'm not going to bring it. I think it could be very solid. But it's mainly looking at both Tauros and the Brute Bonnet that concerns me, because Brute Bonnet obviously can put me to sleep, and I don't have Substitute or something like a Chesto Berry here, so that's a problem. Also, the trainer cards today have just been on point. I feel like I gotta upgrade mine, because all our opponents just have cooler cards. Iron Moth and Flutter Mane, okay. It kind of reminds me of, like, the previous match. Like, I'm thinking I just go for Acid Spray onto the... Okay, they have Booster Energy as well, which is fine. But I mean, they could Acid Spray Shadow Ball either slot right now, which scares me. I would like to still go for it onto Flutter Mane right now. And Spiky Shield. It's just that I could get punished here heavily if they Acid Spray Shadow Ball into Iron Moth. If I were them, I'd be a lot more scared of Glimmora, personally. They might Tera defensively here. Okay. What's it gonna be? The Moth is gonna go for a Tera into grass, which is fine. Like, interesting enough, I can just overheat you now. I feel like you wouldn't make that play unless you knew Glimmora was going down this turn, but I don't know. Nope, they were targeting Iron Moth. Nicely done. Yeah, I mean, I think that's got to be a double up onto that slot then. Actually, sorry, no, that play would make sense because you're essentially... Oh, and they have Power Gem on the Flutter Mane. Did not see that coming. Yeah, that... Sorry, I was saying earlier, like, you wouldn't do that unless you knew Glimmora was going down, but no, it makes total sense because you're doing it defensively to just survive a Power Gem. So that was a really sweet play by them. I'm in a tricky spot right now, I would say. I think, like, what I like to take advantage of is the speed advantage with this team, but right now, like, that's really not the case. Flutter Mane on this side of the field is also not max speed, so I'm thinking we go into Kingambit here. Now, here's the thing. Kingambit has Sucker Punch, right? So, I could obviously Sucker Punch Flutter Mane. This is where we also don't have Sludge Bomb, so I can't actually even hit Moth for that much damage. I think the main thing here is I would expect this to protect or switch out, so I'm going to defensively Tera here, and then go for Kowtow Cleave into Iron Moth and Power Gem into it. Nice. Okay, so that's good at least. They bring out Scizor. Yeah, okay. They play that so well because, like, if you... It's likely you have Scizor in the back because you wanted to beat the Flutter Mane. Yeah. And so I think the double up onto my side was fairly telegraphed, but even with that, I didn't have a super safe play, right? I could have, like, traded, but trading Iron Moth actually isn't worth it for me. Like, they prioritized that knockout really smartly. And they should just go for Heat Wave, okay. Which we dodge with Kingambit, but I get crit. And Power Gem here. Into the Moth. And Kowtow Cleave. The main problem for me right now is that I have this Glimmora in the back. Like, I do not have a clear Scizor answer. Man, losing to Scizor. And it's shiny Scizor. I didn't even realize that. Oh, that's so fitting. I was a huge fan of Scizor in 2012 and 2013. And I used shiny Scizor even though everyone thought it was really ugly. And it kind of was like a signature mon. Flutter Mane switches in. I mean, the other problem is I just Fairy Tera, so now my whole team is weak to Scizor. Yeah, I mean, I want to Kowtow Cleave Scizor and Spiky Shield here. Part of me is like, maybe I just send it in Power Gem instead, expecting him to, like, Bullet Punch Kingambit. I'm going to be honest, I'm pretty behind in this game, so I'm willing to take bigger risks right now. Okay, so far so good. Show me Bullet Punch into Kingambit. Ah, they didn't go for it. Still okay, though. Still okay. Protector would have been quite nice, obviously, but yeah. I'm willing to play a little more aggressive right now, because I don't think making, like, just safe plays wins me this battle. Oh, that's a lot from Cleave. Hold on. Okay. Same dilemma, though. Protect here is so obvious. Has a Sash been revealed on my side? They didn't see it on Glimmora. So they might be worried about Sash on this. So Kowtow Cleave, their Scizor and Sucker Punch, or sorry, and Protect is the obvious play. But I honestly want to just straight up Sucker Punch Flutter Mane and Shadow Ball here into Scizor. Expecting Bullet Punch, like, them to double up onto this. I went for Protect, though. Okay. Nice. That works. Although I would have preferred, like, actually the play I was thinking of would have worked out even better because I wouldn't have wasted a Protect on Flutter Mane. Okay, Kingambit gets another KO though, but the problem is I am probably just fainting to Bullet Punch from Scizor now. So if I had actually gone for the play I was thinking about, which was not protecting, things would have worked out even better. It's Brute Bonnet is the last one, which doesn't instill much confidence in me, but I do have Tera Blast. Wait, maybe with Tera Blast there's a shot. How much does Fairy Tera Blast do to Brute Bonnet is my question. Also, how much does Brute Bonnet do in general? Oh, man, if I actually had gone for the attack, I think I wouldn't have necessarily won because they could still just, like, Rage Powder. My question now is whether or not they Rage Powder. You could, like, Rage Powder Bullet Punch works. I don't think Tera Blast one-shots Brute Bonnet anyway. So I'm going to go Kowtow Cleave Scizor and then try the double protect here. Okay, try the double. We don't get it. What? Don't we just win? They did not Bullet Punch Flutter Mane. No, it's not a guaranteed win yet. I mean, did they Bullet Seed here? Okay. Oh, man. You know what's wild? If I actually just Moonblasted there, I would have won. Oh, also, if they don't get 5 hits with Bullet Seed, I win. Woo! My main question was going to be how much would a Tera Blast plus the poison at the end of the turn done to Brute Bonnet? I could find out by protecting here, but I could actually lose if the Brute Bonnet had Sucker Punch, so I'd rather not and just Moonblast here. Anyway, this is where bulky Flutter Mane comes in huge. It's 148 HP, EVs 52 defense EVs. Also, the play that they made sense because they were likely worried about Focus Sash. Okay, they did go for Sucker Punch on 2 Flutter Mane, so we'll still get to find out essentially because we're faster with Kingambit. Okay, super effective Tera Blast. Oh my gosh, that's strong. No Citrus Berry either. Beautiful. You always faint from 1 tick of poison at this point. Right? And we were faster earlier. Is there any world in which this is a speed tie? They can't win with the Spore. They have to attack here, so I'm fine Sucker Punching. Because the only thing I lose to is Bullet Seed. Because Poison just finishes it off. Even though we saw we were faster. Like, a Sucker Punch from their end wouldn't KO me, right? And a Spore wouldn't win them the game either. So, might as well go for that in the very, very off chance it was actually a speed tie. But, yeah. I think, like, Glimora's being able to set up these Toxic Spikes is so nice, right? We're using it for both damage and the Toxic Spikes, and that combination is just so deadly. But, yeah, I would have lost this game if I think Bullet Punch went into Flutter Mane, and Spore went into Kingambit. But the reason they didn't do that was because they were probably worried about the Focus Sash on Flutter Mane, which makes sense. I guess I also didn't know if Bullet Punch was a guaranteed one-hit knockout onto Flutter Mane, because I don't know my, like, Scizor damage calcs into Flutter Mane specifically, because Scizor isn't that common. But we were able to come back after what was a fairly big deficit. I think the main thing was, like, yeah, calling a lot of the turns against the Flutter Mane correctly, like not Sucker Punching the turns they protected or switched out, and Kingambit got so much more value than it feels like it really should have. And then this game also shows you why Fairy Tera is interesting, not only defensively, although they did miss that Heat Wave onto us, and that may have mattered given the amount of HP we were at in the end. Although since we were Assault Vested, I don't think we would have been in KO range anyway, but obviously could have changed how my opponent played that game. And then the other thing is having that super effective Tera Blast into the Brute Bonnet, which was so satisfying. So, yeah. Okay, Sandy Shocks, Brute Bonnet, Talonflame, Dragonite, Tauros, and Sandy Shocks. It's funny, like, Dondozo just feels so much worse into so many of these Paradox Pokemon. Because, like, Sandy Shocks with Tailwind scares me. It's not bad. It's just not amazing. I think Tailwind in general concerns me here from Talonflame, though. I'll tell you what, like, I think Talonflame Sandy Shocks is the lead that concerns me the most, especially because Talonflame might have Will-O-Wisp. I like Glimmora as a lead. It has Energy Ball and Power Gem. Maybe Dondozo in this one. Moth just doesn't feel that good here. So Glimmora, Dondozo, Tatsugiri. You know, like, I'm actually thinking about Iron Moth in the back because essentially it just feels weird to not bring Flutter Mane here. We'll try this. I don't know. I like my opponent's team a lot. I think, like, Sandy Shocks is a pretty legit Pokemon. I feel like people are still kind of sleeping on it, but you can use it in a lot of different ways. But basically, like, here I'm kind of using Dondozo to bait out, like, Will-O-Wisp or Thunderbolt, for example, and I can just pivot out into Iron Moth, get rid of the threats to Dondozo, and then go from there. Talonflame Dragonite. Okay. I kind of want to Power Gem into Talonflame Protect turn 1. I don't know. What's the worst? The worst would be they Brave Bird Earthquake, maybe. But I think you really have to respect Dondozo right now, right? Because it could, like, Dragon Terra order up into your Dragonite. You could just Wave Crash into Talonflame. And I want to eliminate Talonflame because having Will-O-Wisp here is fairly likely. And Talonflame is just so speedy. Even if Dondozo and Tatsugiri combine. Like, I just have to respect Will-O-Wisp and Tailwind. Dragonite switches. Good start. Into Sandy Shocks. Makes sense. Shiny. Looks cool. Booster Energy as well. Special attack or speed. Special attack. Okay. Ah, Talonflame did have Protect. Okay, that's a really nice play by them. Now I don't even know if you have Will-O-Wisp. Protect, Tailwind, Brave Bird, and a fire type attack like Flare Blitz would make sense, but you could drop one of the 2 offensive attacks for Will-O-Wisp is the thing. Great play. The question here is honestly, do I want to make the gamble that they straight up don't have Will-O-Wisp given that that was their play? Dragon Terra, for example, Wave Crash, and Power Gem. I'm gonna go for it. They have a Terra here. Nicely done. Grass Terra, Sandy Shocks. Yep, that makes sense. Okay, I mean, committing the Terra to Dondozo isn't the end of the world, but what does Talonflame go for? They could actually just Brave Bird, Earth Power into Glimmora as well. I don't know if making the educated guess they don't have Will-O-Wisp is actually a good guess here. And I brought Iron Moth to bait out Will-O-Wisp, so maybe that was the better play. I was just thinking if they had Will-O-Wisp, they would have gone for it on turn 1, but maybe that was a bad assumption. It was a bad assumption. I shouldn't have risked that, but it's okay. The thing is, if you don't get Tailwind, Iron Moth like can just overheat into the Sandy Shock, so it's still okay, but if I had just switched out into Iron Moth here, I would have been in much better shape. I was just thinking about what other attacks they have. They probably drop Flare Blitz, honestly, so Brave Bird, Tailwind, Will-O-Wisp, Protect. Could be worse, I guess, but in the end, I used the Terra this turn that I didn't really need to when I had to switch into Iron Moth. And I even talked about the switching. I was just worried they would double up onto Glimmora, but I guess if they Grass Terra double up on Glimmora, my play doesn't even cover for that anyway, so what am I really worried about? Anyway, it's still okay, right? Like, yes, being burnt is kind of sad, but we still have Dondozo. And I have Iron Moth in the back, which I think can be very helpful in this endgame, given that they just committed their Grass Terra to the spinny guy. Dragonite comes out. I think I'm just going to go into Tatsugiri, honestly. Send it, and then just order up to start getting some damage off at least. But if I just switched an Iron Moth last turn, like, I would have been in a really, really good shape, right? Because, like, I would have traded Talonflame for essentially a Focus Sash, and I think I just saw Protect on turn 1, I was like, are they going to have Will-O-Wisp? But it's still so likely. I think Talonflame, like, one of the best things about Talonflame in this format is to run Will-O-Wisp. Like, you don't really need Flare Blitz. Flare Blitz is quite nice against Golden Go. Maybe it doesn't have Brave Bird. Like, I don't know which move it dropped in the end, but I'm going to switch in Tatsugiri here just because I want to get value out of it at this point. Also, like, a Tatsugiri Iron Moth endgame is fairly solid with Icy Wind, Heat Wave across the board. So, here's order up number 1. That still did so much damage. Nice. And they actually Thunderbolt. Nice. Okay. And Dragon Claw's kind of scary here, but that's fine. Doesn't give me a sense of what item it is. But I don't think Sandy Shocks really scares me in terms of damage here. I wonder if Wave Crash gets the KO. Probably not, right? Because they could switch into Flutter Mane right now. I'm honestly kind of down to Wave Crash here, because punishing Flutter Mane on the switching would be really good. Okay. Let's group on it. That's okay. I think the reality is Iron Moth in this late game is fairly well positioned. And I'm still chipping away at their end, which is pretty good. And they just go for Earth Power, sure. The main thing in this game is, like, I just didn't need to eat up that burn, and that was a little bit careless of me. I made a bad assumption, basically. It's okay. Like, I still have a lot of resources here, right? So Quick's not really doing much to either, but we're setting up for Icy Wind plus Heat Wave here anyway. Oh, but I'm getting spored right now by Bonnet, aren't I? Yeah, because Earth Power will finish me off. Yeah, the burn residual made this slightly more awkward. So I will get put to sleep on Tatsugiri. Can Iron Moth close out this game for me is the question. Oh, or they could just Bullet Seed. Wait, that's really smart. Okay. So they get the knockout onto Tatsugiri. I'm down to my final 2. I don't know my Heat Wave calcs is the problem. Like, does Heat Wave KO Sandy Shocks right now? I don't know. I would think so. Otherwise, my play is to overheat. Also, does Sandy Shocks one-shot Iron Moth is the other question. I want to Heat Wave and Power Gem one slot. Target Brute Bonnet. I guess Brute Bonnet could just Sucker Punch the Glimmora though, so maybe I should have contemplated protecting with it. What else could I have done? Spiky Shield, Overheat is one play. Overheat can go into either slot. I kind of like just exerting pressure here. Oh. We didn't KO Brute Bonnet. Oh, wait, but they Earth Power into... Oh, but now I'm in Extreme Speed. Yeah, actually, wait, no, that just one-shots me. I'll do the damage calc to see if Overheat would have KO'd, because we would have won if... Or, sorry, Heat Wave would have KO'd, because we would have won if that connected. I think I lose... I mean, obviously lose now. I'm at 1 HP. But this one's on me. I still could have played better, right? Like, letting Dondozo get burnt was unacceptable in this game, given that I brought Iron Moth in the back. And Iron Moth was a totally free switch in there. I feel like I was, like... I'm too used to Iron Moth being like Volcarona, but we're not actually weak to Brave Bird, right? So, yeah. Given how much Heat Wave did to Brute Bonnet, though, I think it would have KO'd Sandy Shocks, but I guess it depends on their EV spread, and I honestly have no idea what it is. So, I do want to do the damage calc. They're at around like 70%, and I'm curious if Heat Wave would have gotten the knockout. It was really close either way, but like I said, like I could have had such a huge advantage in this game by just simply switching Dozo out for Iron Moth in this one. So, even if Heat Wave would have gotten the KO there, yeah, it's like, okay, maybe 90% chance to win. I still could have put myself in a much better position if I just played better earlier on in the battle. So, yeah. But let's see. I want to do the damage calc. Yeah, I'm fairly sure we would have gotten that KO if Heat Wave hit. This is Iron Moth's 76 special attack EVs against max HP Sandy Shocks, and it does 69 to 81%. They're around 70%, and very few people are running max HP on Sandy Shocks. So if you have no HP investment, for example, the Heat Wave does 82 to 98, which would have definitely KO'd from the range that they were at. I've seen some run, you know, kind of like 40 to 60 EVs, so Heat Wave still gets the KO there. So, yeah, in the end, I think if we hit that Heat Wave, it should just be a double knockout, or it knocks out the Sandy Shocks, and then Power Gem knocks out the Brute Bonnet, and we just obviously have a 2v1 against the Dragonite. And my Iron Moth would have been at full HP, so Dragonite wouldn't be able to just knock out both Pokemon. Although, actually, if Dragonite had Earthquake, they might have still had a shot, so it wasn't a guaranteed win for me even then. Right, because I'm not sure Overheat or Acid Spray would have actually gotten the knockout onto Dragonite. And so, yeah, if they had Earthquake, they actually may have been able to win that game still. Or yeah, actually, it would have just been Earthquake. So, yeah. Either way, though, it's good to know this Heat Wave damage calc. Like I was saying in that endgame, though, this is a game where it's like, even if like I would have won the game 90% of the time, I still could have played way better. And like missing the switch from Dondozo into Moth was what I think cost me the game more so than this miss in the end. So I'm more frustrated by that than actually losing to a Heat Wave miss, because like that was something that was in my control, right? Heat Wave miss, not in my control. I had to use that basically in that position, but I had that switch available to me. And I was even talking about using Dondozo as bait for Will-O-Wisp. And this would actually be a good time to check out Talonflame's stats on Pikalytics as well. So let's pull that up. So if you look at Talonflame on Pikalytics, this is really interesting. Will-O-Wisp is actually the 4th most used move, which isn't surprising, but the most common moveset by far is Tailwind, Brave Bird, Taunt, and Will-O-Wisp. And every move under Will-O-Wisp is so much lower in usage rate. Flare Blitz, Quick Guard, and Protect. I actually thought Flare Blitz was a little bit higher than the 16% usage here, and so basically, I should be expecting Will-O-Wisp almost all the time from Talonflame, right? I think it was mainly just like they used Protect turn 1. I was thinking, okay, if you have Protect, do you really have Will-O-Wisp as well? But it makes sense to run both, right? Like, if I would think, once again, they drop Flare Blitz, you have Tailwind, Brave Bird, Will-O-Wisp, and Protect would have been my guess there. And so, yeah, I think the main thing is if I switch out into the Iron Moth, and they go for Will-O-Wisp and like Earth Power double up into that slot, and I lose Iron Moth, I actually think I'm in pretty bad shape, because the Iron Moth is actually my best way of dealing with the Sandy Shocks. So, you know, it wasn't like that play was always just foolproof, because my opponent did have a way to cover for it. That being said, I think the likelihood of that feels somewhat unlikely, given that my Glimmora is exerting so much offensive pressure into them as well. So, yeah, I am curious if their Dragonite had like Earthquake in the end there, because that also could have potentially saved them. But either way, it was a fun game, and I definitely could have played better as well. So, yeah. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. So, thanks so much as always for watching. If you enjoy, would really appreciate if you consider leaving a like in the video, and I'll see you all soon. All right. Peace.